I've never fell off a big chimney, you know. You only fall off one of them once, like. Some days might be bloody awful on the floor, you know, and then you set off up the ladder and go through the fog, and it's like being in an aeroplane. You can see all the chimney stacks and towers and church steeples and hills outside of town sticking up through all this cloud and sun shining up above. Beautiful. Sort of. My camera's never worked right though when that's been about, you know. And you can see when the rain's coming, you know, half an hour before it comes, it's on its way. You can see, you know, miles and miles. Summer's best when sun's shining, you know, and everybody down below's all sweating away inside, and you were up there and a nice cool breeze blowing, you know, beautiful. Really, you're dicing with death with a rotten old top on the chimney, you know. There's been a lot of men died fiddling with them things.
It always seems such a dangerous job, you know.
Well, yeah, it is.
If you make a mistake, it's half a day out with the undertaker. The thing is, when I was a lad, you know, I used to be a joiner, and till I was 21, before I went insane and started this job. And the guy I worked for knew that I wanted to be a steeplejack, you see. And every time somebody fell off a chimney, he used to pin it on the back of the door. And by the time I was 21, the back of this door were full of pictures of dead steeplejacks. But I'm still here, you know.
Ah, yes, very much so.
Good thing you are.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Flix Files. So today we're going to be doing a very kind of different video. Regular viewers of my channel will know that I have a playlist called Best of British, and I tend to pick a movie that's been made in England and talk about it. And it's been a while since I did one of those Best of British videos, and certainly there are lots of other movies in my collection that were made in England that I want to do a video about. But for this Best of British, I want to do something very different, so please bear with me. I have always been a huge fan of the gentleman that I'm going to be talking about in this video. And before I get onto that, I want to say that I want to dedicate this video to my late father, who passed away back in 2005. He was 68. Because I have very fond memories of being introduced to the person that I'm going to be talking about by watching a TV program about him. And I was watching it with my dad. And my dad, throughout the years, became a huge fan of this person. And so did I. And I kind of appreciate this character so much, this person that I'm going to be talking about, and just think that he was such a wonderful and interesting person that I wanted to do a video just about him. So if you're a regular viewer of my channel, please bear with me. I know I'm not going to be talking about films in this video, but I did say when I relaunched the Flix Files back in October that I will occasionally do a video every now and again that's sort of out of left field, that's not movie related, and this is going to be one of them. So please bear with me, but hopefully you'll find it really interesting. So the chap that I want to talk about, his name was Fred Dibnah, and he was a steeplejack. Now, if you're not familiar with the term steeplejack and you're not sure what that means, don't worry, I'm going to explain to you. But I wanted to do a video just about this guy because I feel that he was a very interesting, a very clever human being, and the fact that he's British is why I came up with the idea of doing a best of British video just about him. So Fred Dibnah was born in 1938 in a town called Bolton, which is a place in sort of northern England. And I first became familiar with Fred Dibnah way back in 1979. There was a program that was broadcast on BBC about this chap, and it was just about his activities in being a steeplejack. And it was about 45 minutes long, and it was one of the most riveting bits of television I think I'd seen up to that point in my life. I was only 9, but even now, because I have this documentary on DVD, which I'll get to a little bit later, it's still a riveting watch. And everything that I'm going to show you in terms of clips in this video are all sourced from YouTube, because there's a lot of videos on YouTube about Fred Dibnah, and there are a lot of programs and a lot of things to watch if you're intrigued by this chap that I'm going to talk about.
When we finished repairing the chimney stack, we'd been asked by the Royal Society for the Protection of Budgies to put this water tank, it looks like to me, but they call it a peregrine falcon's nesting box. And we've got to put this up on the southwest side, about 30 feet from the top, you see. Now, peregrine falcons do not like pigeons. You know, they have like one for breakfast, one for dinner, and one for the tea. And the local homing pigeon society is a bit up in arms about it, and they really don't want me to put it up, you know. But me personally, I'm not over keen on pigeons, because they put me in bed once for a week with some sort of disease I got off my cat that had been in a load of pigeon droppings.
So yes, Fred Dibnah, and he was a steeplejack, which involved him working on high structures and buildings. So he would primarily be working at the tops of tall chimneys. Some of them are probably in excess of 300 feet high. And he would also work on top of things like church spires. And the thing with Fred Dibnah is, because the program, the first program that he appeared in was in 1979, this was way before things like health and safety were really at the forefront of people's minds. So you watch some of the things that Fred Dibnah does in these videos, and it is truly terrifying. But the incredible thing is that he lived to the age of 66, and he spent the majority of his working life being a steeplejack. And in the end, he succumbed to cancer. He had cancer, and that ultimately was what finished him off at the age of 66 back in 2004, I think it was. So the fact that he'd done this incredibly dangerous job for all those years is just testament to the brilliance of his character and what a true expert he was in the field of steeplejacking. So he would do things like in the original documentary, he had a job where he had to knock down a huge factory chimney brick by brick. Ordinarily, when he was asked to demolish a chimney, there are two ways of bringing down a large chimney. One is the dynamite method, which just involves putting a load of dynamite around the base of the chimney and exploding it and hope that the chimney falls in the direction that you want it to fall. But Fred Dibnah's method was more Victorian. And a lot of what Fred Dibnah did and his working methodologies revolved more in the Victorian way of doing things, because he felt they were a better way of doing things. And what he would do, he would determine which direction he wanted the chimney to fall, and then he would hack away at some bricks on that particular side of the chimney at the bottom. And as he would start to make a large hole, he would use large wooden props to prop the hole up. So effectively, he would end up with a chimney that had a large hole across the bottom half of it, but it had a series of large wooden props or struts holding it up. And when all that was completed, he would build a huge bonfire around the bottom of the chimney and light it. And the idea would be that the fire would burn the wooden props away, and eventually the weight of the chimney would buckle under the huge hole that opened up, and the chimney would fall in the direction that he originally planned it to.
I hope the bloody thing goes. It's going. Going. Go for. Do you like that?
And it always worked, and it's just so fun watching him do this. But the one that appears in the very first documentary that he did was where he had to knock down a chimney brick by brick because it was surrounded by buildings, so there was no way he could fell it in the old-fashioned method. So he just took on this job of sitting at the top of this chimney and literally belt at it with a hammer, a brick at a time, and throw the bricks down the middle of the chimney and just demolish this chimney just on his own. And it took him a long time to do. It took him months to do. But again, I think that just shows that the nature of his character and the fact that every job he did, you could see the tremendous amount of pride that he took in making sure that every job he did it really, really well. And the other thing that Fred Dibnah is very famous for is he was a big fan of steam engines and traction engines, and he would restore them, which is impressive enough, but he would restore them in his backyard, and he had a series of mechanical tools that were all steam powered, all configured in his back garden, and he had a steam engine that would run all of this machinery. So he had things like huge lump hammers and various saws and drills that were all steam powered, everything that he'd built himself in this back garden in the house that he lived in. And it's utterly fascinating. And sure enough, throughout the documentaries that he made in the 80s and the 90s, there were various ones that charted the progress of him repairing a traction engine that he bought as scrap. And he would kind of rejuvenate it and restore it back to its former beauty. And he was incredible at it. So you can chart the journey of his work over the course of like 20, 25 years. And if you watch these programs in the right order, you can see him buy like a traction engine in scrap parts and just restore it. And one of the last programs that he made before he died, he would be driving this restored traction engine, and it looked absolutely beautiful. So he was just such an incredibly skilled and talented guy, and he's just so interesting to watch. And he had 3 wives throughout the process of him making television programs. And one of the programs that I always find really funny is that his first wife would often moan at him because any spare money that they had, he would put it towards his traction engine and buying parts for that and various things, and having certain bits engineered that were too technical or too difficult for him to manufacture himself. So his wife would always moan that they would never go away on holiday. And I remember that there was a program in the very, very early 80s that was aired that was kind of an update on Fred Dibnah. And it's where he finally succumbs to his wife's complaints, and he takes the family to Blackpool, and there's footage of them on Blackpool Beach. and the kids are building sandcastles and having a lovely time, but he kind of looks like a man out of place. He's not really enjoying himself. But we learn that he had an ulterior motive for going to Blackpool, and he got in touch with an engineering company based there because he needed a particular boilerplate making for his traction engine, which he was unable to do himself. And he struck up a deal with this engineering company in Blackpool that if they made him this boilerplate, he would demolish a small chimney that they wanted knocking down on their roof. So in the middle of this holiday, he got his wife to help him set up the ladders so he could climb up this chimney. And they did it in the pouring rain. And I often think how much his wife must have loved him at that point, that she put up with this. And sure enough, they're both there. It's piddling it down with rain, and she's helping him set up the ladders at the side of this chimney. And it's just so funny.
She volunteered for it, you know, to take the rough with the smooth on this job, like. And today's bloody rough. This is the price she has to pay for coming to Blackpool on holiday.
But that's the kind of character that he was. He would never miss an opportunity. And he did many things that were very interesting. He would build weathercocks as like a sideline. And there's videos of him putting weathercocks on the top of church towers and things like that. And some of the videos of him scaling these structures are just terrifying to watch because, as I say, this is before health and safety went mad, but he would do all of these things without any kind of safety ropes or harnesses.
You can see it, nobody's about to do it, but before you can fall down, then my lessons have got to break. We're still old about the 20 piece, so I don't think the break will be alright. There's not many men doing this sort of thing.
So he would literally climb up a ladder at the side of a 300-foot chimney. Sometimes the ladder would be bent backwards, so he would have to climb over an overhang in order to reach the top of the chimney without any kind of safety harness. So if he'd have put one hand or foot wrong, he would have just fallen to his death. And as Fred Dibnah said many times in the videos,
You know, it's one mistake and it's half a day out with the Undertaker, you're dead, you know.
So I have 3 DVDs in my collection just about Fred Dibnah. So I just wanted to point these out to you because if this video and the clips that I'm showing you has sparked your interest in this man and you would like to see a bit more of him, then as I say, there are many videos out there on YouTube. But if you want to go a bit further than that and you want to get a couple of DVDs because sometimes they're better quality than the copies that are available on YouTube, then I'm going to show you the 3 that I own. And these are 3 really good starter DVDs to be introduced to Fred Dibnah. So the first one is just called Fred, and that's the cover there. And this, I think it consists of 6 episodes, but this also contains the original documentary from 1979 that I talked about right at the beginning of this video. So this would be my first port of call if you're new to Fred Dibnah and you want to learn about him and see some of the things that he gets up to. And what's really nice is that the video of this documentary on YouTube is not really great quality, but of course this is a DVD. All these are DVDs; they're not Blu-rays. But this is a really, really great program. So it has the original documentary from '79, and then I think they went back to Fred Dibnah to do a series in 1982. So it was like 3 years later. So it looks a little bit older. The next DVD that I would recommend is this one, which is called Fred Dibnah's Ups and Downs of Chimneys. And this was made in the 90s. So at this point, he was kind of the age that I'm at now. He was about mid-50s. And this is interesting because he goes into detail about specific things, namely, how the hell does he get all the ladders up the side of the chimney? And he goes into the process of how that is achieved, which is fascinating. And the way he explains it just really keeps your attention. And then also in this video, there is a big chimney felling that he does. And he goes through the process of, as I was explaining, about how he knocks away the bottom of the chimney and props it up with wooden poles and then sets fire to it. All of that is also in this video. So again, this is a really nice sort of 10 years later from the previous video where he's a little bit older, but he's still getting up to his tricks. And then the final DVD I have for Fred Dibnah is this one, which is called Fred Dibnah's Backyard Collection. And this is a lovely one because this consists of 3 separate DVDs, and each DVD is about 2 hours, 2.5 hours long. So you get a lot of Fred Dibnah in this set. And there's 3 DVDs. One of them is about his steam engines and his traction engines. One of them is about his backyard where he keeps all of his machines, which is about backyard mechanicking is what he used to call it. And then the last DVD, which is my favorite of the 3, is about how he was trying to build a replica coal mine in his back garden, where he'd actually built a huge pit head that was, I can't remember the height of it, I think it was about 40 feet high. And then he was trying to get planning permission to dig a 100-foot deep mine shaft in his back garden. He never intended to mine coal, but the idea was he wanted to make a replica mine. So when it was up and running, people could come and look at how a pit head would have looked back in the day when it was active. Unfortunately, all of these were filmed in the last few years before he died. So the coal mine that he'd planned, and we see a lot of the construction in this DVD, was never officially completed because sadly he passed away before he'd ever finished that job. But it still makes for such a fascinating, delightful watch. And there are many, many funny scenes in these, as with all Fred Dibnah's videos. One that comes to mind is he was a very good engineer in terms of creating schematics and drawings. And he needed the measurements of his garden to determine the validity of digging this 100-foot deep mine shaft. And one of the measurements that he needed was the measurement from his garden to a riverbank, because his garden was like up here, and then it would slope down to a river. And he needed the height between the river and his garden. And he came up with an idea of using a bow and arrow to get this measurement. And it's just so fascinating. And there's a whole sequence of about 20 minutes long where he uses this makeshift bow and arrow to try and get this measurement. And it's just fascinating, and it's so lovely to watch. And as with all of my videos, a lot of this comes from nostalgia. And the reason I wanted to dedicate this video to my dad is my dad was a huge fan of Fred Dibnah. And I have very fond memories of watching some of his programs with my dad when I was very young. And in some respects, I wish he was alive today, because I could just sit and just watch all of the Fred Dibnah stuff that I own with him, and we would both enjoy it, and it would be wonderful. But alas, that's how life goes, and unfortunately that will never happen. So yes, Fred Dibnah, in my eyes, is a best of British. I think if there were more people like him, the world would be a much better place. He was a very friendly, approachable guy who was passionate about what he did. He was incredibly skilled with what he did. And it was just so delightful seeing a master at work. And I really, really advise you to watch some of his videos if you're not familiar with this chap. Certainly there are plenty of reaction videos on YouTube. I saw one only the other day where a couple of American guys were watching a video of him scaling a chimney, and the two guys were builders, and they were just amazed at the guy's skills and his bravery and his equilibrium for doing what he does.
I almost can't watch. I almost can't watch.
Oh my god, dude.
It's less than a minute left. We gotta pull through this.
God, dude, this is just, it's just fear-inducing.
You're shutting down, man. You never shut down.
I'm just in awe. I'm just in awe. Like, this guy not only has to scale this building, he also has to work.
For sure.
No, thank you. Oh, no.
Just a phenomenal chap. So, Fred Dibnah, wherever you are, I'm a big fan of you. God bless you. So, I hope you enjoyed that very different episode of Best of British. You can be sure the next one I do will be about a movie, so bear with me if this wasn't your cup of tea. But if you did enjoy that, please give me a thumbs up, and I'll speak to you very soon. All right, bye for now.